We've been talking about what Kody and Robyn have been doing, especially how they tried to silence Meri. You remember the NDA situation, right? Just before they were about to close on Coyote Pass, Robyn suddenly pushed this plan to make Meri sign a non-disclosure agreement. The NDA would have forced Meri to give up her legal rights to make any future claims against them. It would have required her to hold them harmless for the money they had taken from her, and it would have legally gagged her from speaking out. Meri, through her lawyers, said no. There was a fight over it, but in the end, the property sale went through without any NDA being signed. At the time of that sale, Kody and Robyn were set to walk away with about $750,000. And that was on top of nearly $1 million they already had from selling their house in Flagstaff. Here's how that played out. They sold that home, and about $400,000 from the proceeds went toward the down payment on their new house, bringing the mortgage down to around $1.6 million. After that, they still walked away with roughly $900,000, meaning there was another $400,000 sitting there in cash. Then came the Coyote Pass sale. The land sold for $1.5 million. Kody and Robyn took half of that, which is $750,000 before closing costs, agent commissions, and seller fees. Even after those expenses, they still had well over $1 million available to them within just a few months. On the show, Kody claimed he had to sell Coyote Pass in order to qualify for the house they currently live in. But that doesn't hold up because he had already bought that house before Coyote Pass was sold. So the big question becomes, where did the money from the Coyote Pass sale actually go? Most people would assume the logical move would be to put that money toward the mortgage. If you're 58 years old and carrying massive debt on a home, you'd think you'd want to reduce it. Why would you want to be heading into your retirement years with a $12,000 to $13,000 monthly payment hanging over your head? That kind of expense isn't sustainable, especially if the show were to end. But here's where things get even stranger. They didn't want to pay Meri back. They tried to force her into silence with an NDA. When that failed, they didn't get the outcome they wanted financially. Instead of Meri getting a tiny fraction, she ended up with 25%. And then, not long after, Kody and Robyn recorded a $750,000 second mortgage on their home. Honestly, this is something I've never seen before. On December 31st, Kody and Robyn went to a title company and took out a $750,000 line of credit plus interest. This wasn't a standard loan. It's a revolving credit agreement, meaning the lender agreed to let them borrow, repay, and borrow again up to a maximum of $750,000. Multiple advances can be made over time, all secured by the property. No point can the total balance exceed $750,000, not including fees or collection costs. And here's the final detail. That loan doesn't come due until January 5, 2056. When you step back and look at all of this together, it raises some very uncomfortable questions. They took out a 30-year home equity line of credit. 30 years. That alone is shocking. Most home equity lines are set up for about 10 years, not 3 decades. What this really is, at its core, is a cash advance against their home. They needed money. When someone is cash poor and needs access to funds quickly, a home equity line of credit is one of the easiest ways to do it. You're basically borrowing against the equity in your house and using that money however you want. In many cases, people do this for renovations. But that's not happening here. I checked the permits. There are none. No remodels, no upgrades, no plans to rehab the property at all. So then the obvious question becomes, why $750,000? That's not a small number. That's enormous. The agreement itself says the lender has agreed to make advances to the borrower on a revolving basis, with the total outstanding balance never exceeding $750,000. What it does not say is that they were handed $750,000 all at once. Instead, it works more like a checking account. They can draw money, pay it back, and draw again as needed. What makes this even stranger is Kody and Robyn's history with mortgages. In the past, they've refinanced very quickly after buying homes. They seem to favor adjustable-rate mortgages, often short-term ones like 3 or 5-year ARMs, and then refinance once the rate lock expires. They've also used first and second mortgages together to avoid paying mortgage insurance. In those cases, the borrowing was still tied directly to buying the house. But this time is different. They already had a first mortgage of $1.6 million, and I strongly suspect they paid that balance down. Now, less than a year, maybe 8 months after receiving all that money from the sale of Coyote Pass, they take out a loan against their home for the exact same amount they walked away with. What are the chances of that? Think about it. If they paid down $750,000 on the mortgage, they would then have enough equity to borrow up to $750,000 again and still stay within acceptable loan-to-value limits. Lenders do not allow second mortgages that push you to 100% equity. That just doesn't happen. Generally, you need to maintain at least 20% equity. So what does this tell us? Tells me that whatever money they had from selling Coyote Pass and from selling their previous home is gone. Gone. Which means Kody and Robyn have extremely expensive tastes and are spending a lot of money. And fast. Where does that kind of money disappear to in such a short time? Kody does have child support to pay for truly. There may have been legal fees. But even that doesn't come close to explaining it. They haven't bought another property. We do know they like to buy things. They like filling their house. Jewelry, collectibles, doll clothes. But are we really supposed to believe Robyn burned through $1 million on doll clothes? So then you start asking the uncomfortable questions. Are they preparing to pay Meri back? Are they bracing for a lawsuit and trying to make sure they have cash on hand for legal fees? Even that explanation doesn't fully add up. 'Cause if they truly put the $750,000 from Coyote Pass into the house, then the money from selling their previous home is already gone. Any equity they could have used to lower their loan-to-value ratio clearly wasn't a priority. Paying off the house wasn't the goal. What this looks like instead is very simple. They're not treating the house like a home. They're treating it like a piggy bank. If you're in a truly solid financial position, you generally don't take out a $750,000 home equity line of credit just 1 year after buying a house. And a HELOC that large is almost unheard of. I've rarely ever seen one anywhere near that size. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with Sister Wives. I have no idea if the show will continue after this season or not. But the way this is structured makes one thing very clear. They're using their house as a piggy bank. And again, if you're financially secure, you don't need a HELOC of this magnitude. Even if this was done to pay Meri back, it would still prove something alarming. It would mean they don't have enough liquid cash on hand to pay her without borrowing against their home. That alone is wild. These are people who have been on reality television for, 15 or 16 years. And they wouldn't have a few $100,000 available through savings, investments, stocks, mutual funds, gold, anything? Most people who are genuinely wealthy keep a significant amount of money accessible in cash. Not just to support their lifestyle, but to handle emergencies when they come up. What this situation suggests instead is that there is no emergency fund. There's no money set aside to pay Meri back. There's no money to pay Janelle back. There's no cushion at all. The moment money comes in, it goes right back out. For most people, a home is meant to be a long-term investment. I'll give you a personal example. My husband and I bought our home in 2013. Since then, we've never refinanced our primary mortgage. We've paid extra toward the principal every single month. We've never taken out a second mortgage. We've never treated our home equity like a cash machine. We keep separate cash reserves for expenses and emergencies. Even when I've been sued, I paid my legal fees without touching the equity in my house. I never needed to borrow against my home to cover bills or unexpected costs. And there's a reason for that. When you carry a high level of debt on a home, especially in a market like this one, you're taking on serious risk. Inflation is higher. They bought at a high point in the market. And there's always the possibility of a market correction or a bubble bursting. We've seen it before. I worked in the mortgage industry leading up to the 2008 crash. Home prices rose fast. People went on borrowing sprees. High-risk and subprime loans were everywhere. When the market collapsed, everything changed. While lending standards are stricter now, housing has once again become extremely expensive over the last few years. Pace of price increases we've seen simply isn't sustainable long-term. I'm not a financial advisor, but this much is clear. Markets don't climb forever. There's always a point where growth slows. It may not crash, but it cools. There's usually a sweet spot where people buy low and stay put. When I bought my house, it was near the bottom of the market. Today, it's probably worth double what I paid. Could I sell and move? Sure. But then I'd be buying at the top of the market, and that's risky. Buy high, and there's no guarantee your home will be worth more next year. That's exactly what's happening in Flagstaff right now. They bought at the top. Late 2024 and 2025 marked the peak. Price growth has slowed. Inventory is up. There are fewer pending sales. Appreciation is cooling. And when you combine all of that with a massive HELOC, it paints a picture that's hard to ignore. Homes are now sitting on the market longer. Inventory is up, and there isn't the same housing shortage there used to be. They bought this house in 2024 for about $2.1 million. Just a few years ago, homes were gaining $100,000 to $200,000 in equity every single year. It was wild. Take their old house as an example. They bought the hash knife home for around $880,000 or $890,000. Within 5 years, it nearly doubled in value. They sold it for about $1.7 million. That was a perfect move. They bought at the low point and sold at the high point. But then they turned around and did the opposite. They bought their next house at the top of the market. Now, a year later, a realtor estimates the home's value at roughly $2.116 million. That's only about a $16,000 increase in equity in an entire year. On a house at that price point, that's a cooling market. There's no way around it. And honestly, from a financial standpoint, this is hard to watch. All the fighting you're seeing right now, the deflecting, Robyn claiming people are jealous, Janelle calling this a power move, Kody accusing others of backdoor deals, it's all noise. It's all distraction. Now they're throwing Janelle under the bus. But the truth underneath all of it is simple. They owe people money. There's a very real possibility Meri could sue them. Maybe this loan is to pay her back. But if that's the case, all they're doing is piling more debt on top of an already massive mortgage. And that only proves one thing. When Sister Wives eventually ends, they won't be able to afford this house. Kody is not going to find another job that pays him the same amount with the same consistency that this show has provided. He has every incentive in the world to keep the show alive because he's locked into a 30-year mortgage and now a massive home equity line of credit on top of it. And the show is already showing signs of decline. Sister Wives is canceled. Within 2 to 3 years, Kody and Robyn will be bankrupt. Possibly even sooner. In many ways, they already are. They're just not bankrupt on paper yet. They're cash poor. And that's exactly why they're fighting with Meri. That's why they're fighting with Janelle. They can't pay them back. Even after all the money they received last year, they still don't have the funds to make things right. So I want to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, give the video a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.